What happens when television's most trusted interviewer faces one of the most polarizing figures in modern royalty? At first, it seemed like a calm, dignified exchange. But minutes in, the energy shifted. Polite questions gave way to sharp retorts, eye rolls, and attention no one in the studio could ignore. By the end, it felt less like an interview and more like a duel. Diane Sawye, ever composed, sat with her trademark grace, the same poise that had disarmed presidents and movie stars alike. Across from her sat Meghan Markle, polished in a cream blouse and tailored navy blazer, her hair cascading in glossy waves. She carried herself with the confidence of someone intent on steering the narrative. "Meghan, thank you so much for being here," Diane began warmly, her voice balancing kindness with authority. Meghan returned the smile, but with a noticeable edge. "Thank you for having me. It's always refreshing to be on a platform where I can share the truth, rather than the twisted stories others like to spin." The audience chuckled politely, but the undertone was clear. Diane's eyes flickered with the faintest surprise before she pressed on. "That's exactly why I wanted to talk with you. People have seen headlines, but they haven't always heard your voice directly. Let's start simple. How are you? How is life these days?" Meghan crossed her legs, sat straighter, and sighed deliberately. "Life is busy, demanding. When you've lived under constant scrutiny, you learn to thrive in spite of it. But let's be honest, people like me carry the weight of everyone else's expectations." Her tone was less conversational and more like a lecture. Diane gave her space before gently continuing. "And how is Harry? Many admire the way you've stood together through challenges." Meghan's smile thinned, her expression sharpening. "Harry is fine. But let's be clear, he isn't my shield or my story. People constantly try to make me his side note. The truth is, I've faced hostility he never had to endure." The answer landed pointedly, drawing a low murmur from the audience. Meghan leaned back, seemingly unfazed. Diane's smile stayed steady, though tighter now. "I understand. But people admire your marriage as a partnership." Meghan gave a cool laugh. "A partnership, sure. But let's not pretend people don't reduce me to him. It's insulting." Diane inhaled slowly, recalibrating. She shifted the topic. "Let me ask about your children. Many admire how openly you speak about motherhood. How has it changed you?" The tension deepened. Meghan's eyes narrowed. "Changed me? That assumes I needed changing. I've always been strong, independent, self-aware. Having children doesn't define me. I define myself. But people love to paint it as though motherhood redeemed me, as if I needed redeeming." The room grew still. Even Diane's producers exchanged uneasy glances behind the cameras. Meghan's words carried not just conviction, but defiance. Diane leaned in slightly, her voice calm but firm. "I hear you. Still, many mothers feel a profound transformation." "It's a shared experience," Meghan cut in. "Yes, but my experience is different. And we need to stop making me relatable to everyone else. I'm not everyone else." Her words hung heavy in the silence that followed. Diane took a measured breath, keeping her composure intact. "Let's talk about your journey with the royal family." Diane transitioned carefully. "Looking back, how do you feel now?" Meghan's jaw tightened, irritation flashing in her eyes. "Honestly, any mention of the royal family feels like a trap. Every question is judgment disguised as curiosity. I don't owe anyone answers about an institution that thrived on tradition at the expense of individuality." The words sliced through the air. For the first time, Diane's smile faltered, just slightly, before she recovered. The atmosphere had shifted completely. What began as a polished conversation was unraveling into a tug-of-war. Meghan's tone grew sharper, colder. She leaned back with arms loosely crossed, signaling she wasn't here to be handled. She was here to dominate. Diane adjusted her notes, unshaken. "You've spoken about the challenges of entering the royal family, but many point out that the titles, recognition, and visibility also brought opportunities. Do you see a balance there? Meghan's laugh was abrupt, edged with disdain. Opportunities? Let's call them what they were. Chains. Expectations to perform, to smile, to play a role in their outdated theater. You may see it as privilege. I see it as exploitation. Diane's expression stayed thoughtful, refusing to flinch. I hear you, but others might argue that visibility amplified your causes. Women's rights, mental health, racial equality. Didn't that position allow you to make a difference? Meghan tilted her head, a smirk tugging at her lips. A difference. But at what cost? I didn't need a tiara to care about women's rights. I didn't need a palace to speak about mental health. The irony, Diane, is that people believe my platform existed only because of the royal family. That's the narrative I refuse to accept. That's an insult. Frankly, her words landed heavy. The audience, seated just beyond the bright studio lights, shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged looks. Some clapped softly in support, but many could feel the dismissive edge cutting through what should have been thoughtful answers. Diane leaned forward slightly, her voice still soft, but firmer now. I don't think anyone would deny your talents or your passion, but visibility is powerful, and whether you intended it or not, being part of the monarchy elevated your voice to a global stage. Meghan's eyes narrowed. Elevated by whose standards? I was already making a difference before any of them knew my name. It's time people stopped acting like I should be grateful for being tolerated by an institution that didn't even want me there. There it was, the sting. Diane's professional calm wavered, though only for a second. She straightened her papers slowly, buying herself time. She had interviewed presidents, dictators, and movie stars in full scandal, but Meghan's defensiveness carried a unique venom. Switching gears, Diane tried a lighter angle. Let's talk about your Netflix series. The first season had tremendous success. There have been reports, rumors really, that you requested a larger budget and more control for the next season. Can you comment on that? Meghan's eyebrows shot up, her lips curling into a cool smile. Rumors, that's your word, not mine. Let me be clear. When you're creating content that reshapes narratives, you don't ask for permission. You set the terms. If people want my voice, they'll have to understand it comes at a premium. Quality isn't free, Diane. The remark landed with a jolt. A few people in the audience audibly gasped. Diane, ever composed, kept her tone light. I understand that perspective, but some critics have framed it as being demanding. Meghan didn't miss a beat, demanding or refusing to settle for less than what I deserve. Funny how women with standards are called difficult, while men with the same standards are called leaders. Don't you find that interesting, Diane? Her voice had taken on a lecture-like cadence, as though she weren't answering questions but issuing declarations. Diane folded her hands carefully. That's a fair point about double standards, but let me press a little. Do you think some of the backlash could be less about gender and more about perception? That perhaps the public feels disconnected when statements about privacy and peace are paired with very public contracts and productions? The temperature dropped. Meghan's smile vanished, replaced by an icy glare. Perception is a lazy word. People believe what they're told by tabloids and journalists. She let the word linger, who thrive on poking at contradictions. Privacy doesn't mean silence, Diane. Privacy means I decide what to share, when, and how. That's power. And yes, I've earned it. Her tone was condescending, daring Diane to challenge her. The silence stretched, taut as a rope pulled too tight. The control room whispered frantically into headsets, debating whether to cut to commercial, but Diane raised a hand subtly to the floor manager. Not yet. She wanted this to play out. The veteran journalist smiled again, but there was steel underneath. Now let's pivot slightly. When you think of your time in the royal family, what do you feel? Anger? Sadness? Relief? Meghan adjusted her posture, leaning forward this time, her voice dripping with disdain. I feel nothing. Honestly, they're irrelevant to me now. I don't wake up in the morning thinking about a crumbling institution. I've moved on. It's the media that can't let go. That landed like a hammer. Gasps rippled through the room. Diane blinked slowly, choosing her words with surgical precision. You don't think the royal family remains relevant in any way? Meghan's laugh was sharp, dismissive. Relevant to who? To people clinging to fairy tales and outdated traditions? Maybe, but not to me. They're a relic, Diane. A museum piece, and I refuse to live my life as someone else's exhibit. The arrogance in her tone filled the studio like smoke, thick and suffocating. Even Diane's unshakable calm was beginning to crack. Her lips tightened, and her pen tapped once against her notepad. A subtle tell, but enough to signal the shift. "Meghan," she said carefully, "you've built a career on speaking truth, as you call it. But don't you think truth also requires humility?" The question was soft, almost gentle, but its edge was razor-sharp. Meghan froze, her jaw tightening. "Humility," she repeated with a scoff. "It's interesting how people demand humility only from those who dare to stand tall. I've bowed enough in my life. I won't do it here." The words landed like thunder. The audience, caught between awe and discomfort, leaned forward in silence. Diane, with decades of patience under her belt, inhaled slowly. She gave the smallest of nods to herself as though acknowledging privately, the storm was here. The polite opening of the interview was long gone. The battle lines had been drawn. Meghan's arrogance was no longer subtle. It was blatant, unrestrained, and the patience of one of television's most respected journalists was wearing dangerously thin. And as the cameras kept rolling, everyone in the studio knew something explosive was about to happen. The studio was silent except for the soft hum of the cameras. Meghan leaned back in her chair, arms folded across her chest, her expression set in that familiar mixture of defiance and superiority. Diane sat opposite, pen resting idly on her notes, her legendary composure beginning to thin like glass under pressure. "See, let's move into something personal," Diane said carefully, her tone still professional but tighter than before. "Your husband, Prince Harry. Many people see him as central to your story. How would you describe your relationship today, given all the pressures, the attention, and the choices you've made together?" Meghan smirked, tilting her head with a dismissive chuckle. "Harry and I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Our marriage isn't some public soap opera to be dissected by the media or reduced to sound bites. Frankly, it's insulting that you even frame it like that, Diane. We're stronger than ever. And unlike some people, we don't need validation from strangers." The audience reacted audibly. Some gasped, others shifted uncomfortably. Diane didn't blink, but her jaw tightened. She tried again, softening her voice. "I meant no disrespect. I was asking because many admire the way you two present a united front, and they're curious how you maintain that strength." Meghan's reply came like a dagger wrapped in silk. "Curiosity is an entitlement. People confuse the two. Our private lives are not here for public entertainment, no matter how desperately interviewers want to squeeze a headline out of them." The sting was unmistakable. Diane's hand twitched slightly as she adjusted her notes, her patience being tested inch by inch. She chose a new angle. "Let me ask about your children. You've often spoken about wanting to protect them from the same scrutiny you faced. How do you manage that balance, given how public your work and appearances remain?" Meghan's lips curved into a humorless smile. "Balance is a word people like to throw around when they don't understand what it's like to be me. My children are protected because I say so, because I refuse to let vultures circle them. And before you ask the obvious follow-up, no, Diane, I don't owe the public pictures, details, or anecdotes. They're mine, not anyone else's storyline." The sharpness in her tone rippled through the studio like static. Diane inhaled slowly, visibly forcing her calm. "I only asked because you've spoken about motherhood before in very personal terms, and I thought our viewers might appreciate hearing more about how you navigate that." Meghan's laugh was clipped cold. "Viewers don't deserve every piece of me. Diane, that's where people get confused. I share what I want when I want. And if that's not enough for them or for you, that's not my problem." The studio audience sat frozen, watching the tension mount like a slow-building storm. Even the camera operators glanced nervously at each other. Diane pressed her lips together for a moment and then tried one more pivot. Let's turn to the monarchy. You've been outspoken about your experience with the royal family. Looking back, do you feel there's any room for reconciliation, or do you consider that chapter fully closed? Meghan's eyes flashed with irritation. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain. Reconciliation with an institution built on hypocrisy, on outdated rituals, on people who never wanted me there in the first place. Why on earth would I reconcile with a system that thrives on exclusion? No, Diane, that chapter isn't closed. It's burned. The words landed like dynamite. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Diane blinked slowly, a flicker of genuine shock crossing her face. But Meghan wasn't done. You see, people like you love to romanticize the monarchy, fairy tales, castles, crowns. But for me, it was a gilded cage. And the sooner people stopped expecting me to bow down in gratitude for being trapped, the better. That was the moment Diane's patience visibly wavered. Her pen tapped once, sharp against her notepad. Her calm smile faltered just enough to reveal a sliver of steel beneath. Meghan, she said evenly, I think it's important to remember that while the monarchy has its flaws, it also gave you a platform that amplified your voice globally. Don't you think there's at least acknowledgement owed for that? Meghan scoffed, her voice rising with irritation. An acknowledgement? I owe them nothing. If anything, they owe me for putting up with their nonsense as long as I did. I built myself long before I ever walked into that palace. Harry may have been born into it, but I brought the authenticity. Without me, they'd still be just another tired royal family trying to stay relevant. The audience gasped again. Buddy? Aiden. Louder this time. Diane's face hardened, though she kept her voice level. That's a bold statement. It's the truth. Meghan shot back, her tone now openly combative. And people can't stand it when a woman, especially a woman like me, dares to say it. The air in the studio was electric now, thick with tension. Diane, her legendary composure fraying, leaned forward slightly. Her voice, still measured, carried a sharper edge. Meghan, I've interviewed presidents, activists, even war survivors. I've seen strength expressed in humility, in grace, in perseverance. What I'm seeing now feels less like strength and more like arrogance. Do you see how that might come across? Meghan's jaw tightened, her smirk returning with venom. Arrogance is just a word people use when they can't handle confidence. I refuse to apologize for knowing my worth, Diane. Maybe that's uncomfortable for some, but that's their problem, not mine. The silence after her words was deafening. Diane's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, and the camera caught it. A flicker of fire that signaled the breaking point was near. In the control room, producers leaned forward, whispering frantically, "She's pushing her. She's really pushing her." Meghan sat back with a look of triumph as though she'd won something invisible. Diane, however, adjusted her notes one final time, her composure hanging by a thread. The audience could feel it. The veteran journalist was about to snap. And when she did, the fallout would be unforgettable. The cameras rolled on, the studio lights burning hot. Meghan shifted in her seat, her chin raised high, her arms still crossed like a queen enthroned. She exuded defiance, every line of her posture screaming that she was untouchable. Diane Sawye, however, sat silently across from her, the weight of decades of broadcasting composure pressing down on her like a shield. But that shield was cracking. The silence was long, almost unbearable. Then Diane leaned forward, her voice low, deliberate, and sharper than ever before. Meghan, I've given you the space to tell your story. I've listened as you dismissed, deflected, and talked down to me and to this audience. But let me be perfectly clear. This isn't strength. This isn't authenticity. This is arrogance. And frankly, it's unbecoming. The audience froze. The control room erupted with gasps and panicked whispers. Meghan blinked, her composure wobbling for the first time all morning. "Excuse me," she said, her voice colder now. Diane didn't hesitate. You've spoken of privacy while seeking the spotlight. You've rejected the monarchy while benefiting from every ounce of its visibility. You've demanded control while mocking anyone who dares to question you. And, through it all, you've treated this conversation, me and the people watching at home, with contempt. Enough is enough. The studio erupted in whispers, the tension unbearable. Meghan's mouth fell open slightly, then snapped shut, her eyes flashing with indignation. "You have no right. I have every right," Diane cut in, her tone sharp as glass. "I've sat across from leaders and survivors who've shown more humility in 5 minutes than you've displayed in an hour. You talk about power, Meghan, but power without grace is just ego. And that's what you've shown us today." Meghan's breath came faster. She leaned forward, her voice trembling with anger. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've endured. And yet here you are," Diane interrupted, her voice unwavering, "painting yourself as the sole victim, dismissing everyone else's truth but your own. Let me remind you, without Harry, without the royal family, without the very platform you claim to despise, you wouldn't be sitting in this chair. You wouldn't be here at all." The words landed like a thunderclap. The audience audibly gasped. Meghan's face flushed crimson, her lips trembling as if searching for the right comeback. But for the first time, there was nothing. Diane pressed on, her tone final, unshakable. "You came here today, and instead of showing grace, you showed condescension. Instead of engaging, you lectured, and instead of conversation, you gave us contempt. This program cannot and will not continue in this way. Not with you treating it as your personal stage." Meghan had shot to her feet, her blazer snapping sharply as she pulled it closed. "This is outrageous. I won't be spoken to like this." Diane's voice cut through the chaos. "Then perhaps you shouldn't come on shows where you expect to be worripped instead of questioned. That's not journalism, that's theater, and we don't do theater here." The studio went dead silent. Meghan, her face a mask of fury, yanked off her microphone and tossed it onto the chair. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "This interview is over," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage, "and you'll regret the way you've treated me." Without another word, she turned on her heel and stormed off stage, her heels clicking like hammers against the studio floor. The cameras caught every second right up until she disappeared behind the curtain. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Diane turned back to the camera, her expression calm once more, though her eyes still burned with fire. "To our viewers at home," she said softly, "I want to apologize. This is not how interviews are meant to go. We strive for honesty, fairness, and respect. What you just witnessed was none of those things, and for that I am sorry." The audience, stunned but grateful, broke into hesitant applause. Diane closed her notebook, set down her pen, and leaned back. The storm had passed, but its echoes would ripple far beyond that studio. By evening, clips of Meghan's walk out and Diane's unflinching words would dominate headlines around the world. And in living rooms everywhere, the question would linger. Was this the day Meghan Markle finally lost control of her own narrative? If you enjoyed this dramatic showdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the never miss the next explosive story. Your support helps us bring you more unforgettable moments.